for everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us. We will begin shortly as there will be silence, but please know you're connected. We're just going to give a minute for people to log in here. Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to FSR's Gratitude and Grieving, Grief, the Holidays, and the Power of Rituals webinar. I'm Angela Freelander, Director of Development for FSR. As we embark on the holiday this season, we here at FSR are focusing our attention on gratitude. We at FSR are grateful and honored to be able to serve, support, and hold in our hearts those living with and lost to sarcoidosis. We are touched deeply by the lives of those impacted by this disease. We mourn alongside you the loss of loved ones taken too soon. We stand in front of you, resolute in the quest to find treatments and a cure for sarcoidosis, in the hopes that no one suffers from this condition in the future. Tonight we kick off what will be a month-long event of gratitude and giving. Now, through the end of the year, we are inviting the sarcoidosis community to reflect on what we are grateful for, reflect on memories of those who's changed our lives, and reflect on how together we can bring hope to the future. It is my honor to introduce Katie Durbin, a licensed clinical social worker who focuses on chronic illness, grief, loss, and hope, and will guide us in this event as we learn ways to live with grief and ways to invite the memories of our loved ones into the holidays and beyond. Katie has a full program, so let me pass it along to her to start the event.
Hi, everyone. So glad that you are joining us, and I'm so honored to be here with you all. So thank you. Thank you for giving us your time, and thank you, Angela, for the introduction. So yes, I am Katie Durbin, clinical social worker. After many years in working in the hospitals, I realized there was a gap in the community for helping families with illness and as well as grief and loss. So that's what led me to start my practice. I also was the caregiver for my dad through his illness and through the end of his life. So not only do I understand this professionally and clinically, but also personally, which I think just helps me help others in a more understanding way. So we're going to get started. I hope you can get comfortable and sit back and relax. And I know it's a heavy topic, but hopefully it will be worth the time. All right, so I'm going to share, let's see, Angela, I think you need to stop sharing, sorry, so I can share, thank you. Okay.
We can see it. We're good.
But it's not. Oh, there we go. Okay. So what we're going to cover today. So what is grief? How we process grief, coping strategies. We're going to talk a good amount about grief in general, because the truth is it isn't all that different around the holidays, right? It just often feels louder and bigger and more magnified. So I think that understanding grief a little bit better in general can just help us manage at all different times of the year and all different milestones. What is grief? It's such a small word, and we use it to describe really big, complex emotions. So I am someone that likes to start with definitions. I think that this helps us remember that grief is normal and natural. And so it's the normal and natural emotional reaction to loss or change of any kind. If you really think about that sentence and definition, it really encompasses so much. I mean, think of what that encompasses even in the last year and a half, 2 years since COVID started. How much grief we're all experiencing, just related to that, how much change and loss we've experienced. And then the other definition, the conflicting feelings caused by the end of or change in a familiar pattern of behavior. Again, reviewing or reflecting on the last 18 months, so much grief. And grief isn't just loss, right? It's jobs, connections, loss of your house, of a marriage, physical abilities. And there's grief with every single one of those. I don't know if anyone has seen this floating around social media at all, but I like it as a reminder that it's just a universal truth about being human and that we can't escape it. And there's nothing wrong with you if you're grieving. You are just being human. And I think it really helps to normalize instead of like pathologize what we experience when we experience grief. The other thing that I don't think is talked about nearly enough is what shapes our grief. So grief is as unique as our fingerprints. And so all of these factors that you see here impact how we grieve. What kind of relationship did we have with the person who we lost? What was the kind of what led to the death? What kind of death was it? And then, of course, society and culture, our personalities, our past experiences with loss. Have we ever had a loss before? And maybe we've had many. And then what kind of support network we have. And then also our religious and spiritual beliefs. These all shape the kind of grief that we experience. There are so many reactions to grief and loss, and they are all highly unique and personal and individual. Like I said in the last one, grieving is as unique as our fingerprints and how we do it. So this is where the comparison can really get in our way, in this kind of access to everyone and everything time. It's easy to compare how we're grieving or how we're feeling with other people, and it just doesn't serve us because the only way to do it is the way that we do it. There's no right and there's no wrong. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the grief process. What does grief actually feel like? This is a description from Megan Devine. She is a therapist who specializes in grief, and she also lost her husband tragically. And I really like the way she describes this. Other ways that people describe grief, like waves, the waves, they're bigger some days, they're smaller some days, or they're more powerful some days and less powerful other days. The other thing people often refer to as like it's like a volume. So sometimes the volume is turned up really high and loud, and our grief feels almost deafening. And then other times we can hardly hear it, and we're just able to go about our life, and everything in between. But I do think that this is a really helpful way to look at it. Hopefully this is gonna work so everybody can see this. I wasn't able to embed it. Okay.
The best way for me to describe grief is like you're at a crowded movie theater and you've bought your tickets for a rom-com and you're there and the movie starts and it's been going for about 15 minutes, and then all of a sudden the screen splits in two and melts and a horror movie starts in its place. This isn't the movie that you showed up for. This isn't what you bought tickets for. And everybody else around you is behaving as though this is all perfectly fine. And you're like, wait a minute, this isn't this isn't right. Like, this is a horror movie. This is not what I signed up for. And they're like, yeah, it's just a movie. Just eat the popcorn. This is great. Right? When you're inside intense grief like that, you're no longer watching the same movie everybody else is watching. And because nobody else is watching that movie, they all think everything is fine. Nothing is fine. Right? And it's that dissonance between what's happening in your world versus what's happening in other people's world. And the fact that we don't recognize that everybody is walking around with their own personal movie screen all the time.
I really like that. I think it's a really helpful description. And I wonder if anybody else has felt that way. I really like this description and understanding. There's really only two stages of grief: who you were before and who you are after. I mean, really, there's no other way to look at it, right? It's simple and powerful. And there's things that happen in our life that change us forever, not just loss, having children, accidents, a diagnosis. We're meant to change and evolve, right? It's inevitable. I think it's the lack of choice and control that is especially difficult about this change that happens to us. So there's many theories about grief. There's just so many. I think the most famous is probably The 5 Stages of Grief by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, which I'm sure all of you have heard of. And while these help us identify our feelings and emotions that we may be feeling, some of them, just some of them, not even nearly all of them, it was never meant to be a step-by-step guide or a prescription or a roadmap for what grief was supposed to look like. Um, it's not linear. Grief is not linear. I think that the little squiggles on the right hand of the screen, like that is more in line with what grief looks like. There's no beginning, middle, and end. And I think it's really important to understand this because, again, if we're comparing ourselves to these 5 stages and we're supposed to be at this stage, but we're not, or we thought we were here and now we're back here, then it starts to cause even more distress. And if you can really just understand that you're going to have all kinds of emotions and you're going to be up and down and all around, and that there is no linear straight shot through this. So I wanted to touch a little bit on these specific emotions that come with grief. They are 2 of the most common emotions with grief, and they are really some of the hardest. I mean, they're really some of the hardest, the 2 of the hardest that we deal with in general in life, right? And both can feel consuming. We do tend to lean towards one or the other, depending on our personality, not that we don't often experience both, but that if you have some anxious tendencies, you tend to sort of lean that way when we're in great distress in times of grief. And if you are someone who tends to have a little bit more of that anger, that can really get heightened during a time of grief. And both are the result most often of pain. So it's just pain deep down, and the way that it gets expressed is anxiety or anger. And both grow the more we focus on them. So I don't know if you are familiar with the saying, we amplify what we focus on, but these 2 in particular, the more we think about how anxious we are or how angry we are, the more we feel anxious and angry. So one simple antidote, and by no means is this a cure, but one simple antidote to both of them is gratitude. It's taking off sort of the lens of anxiety or anger and putting on the lens of gratitude, because we can always find gratitude, right? And it makes our perception and our reality look very different. So I'm grateful for the time I had with my loved one, the time I got to have them in my life, that I got to have them in my life at all. I'm grateful for the people who are still here, who love me and support me. I'm grateful that I still get to live my life, and all the small things that we see and that we do every day. So, some other just tips related to anger and anxiety. Acknowledging and identifying these emotions sometimes really reduces the power that they have. So, simply saying, wow, I am feeling really anxious right now. And I bet it's because I am in intense grief and I am missing my person, or I am so angry, but I'm really in pain underneath it all. That is what is going on. And then figuring out what your best outlets are. So we have this anxiety and our anger, and it's in our bodies, right? And so, how can we get it out? We want to get it out. So, is that just crying and releasing it? Is it writing it out? Writing a letter, writing it out, just writing out all of your feelings? Is it calling someone on the phone or going for a walk with someone and talking to someone? Whatever the strategy that sort of works best for you, exercise, moving your body, all of these things are ways to get it out. Another strategy is limiting the time that you give it. So with anxiety in particular, I don't know if anyone's familiar with, they call it worry time, or a worry box, or a worry journal, where you give yourself a set amount of time. And this works the same for anger. 30 minutes, 15 minutes a day. And that's where you just go at it. You're anxious, be angry about all of it. List everything you're angry about or everything you're anxious about. Ruminate on it. Let it just spin and spin. And then when the time's up, we're done. We did it. Now we're going to set it aside, knowing that it's going to be right there tomorrow and we come back to it. And now we're going to distract ourselves. And distracting yourself, again, is finding what works for you. Oftentimes it's something to kind of busy our hands and our bodies so it can, clean something, organize something, cook something, anything creative with your hands, stretch, go for a walk, listen to music, call somebody, anything that creates the thought stopping, we call it. So the time is up and we need to stop. We've given it our time and now we distract ourselves. Now, this is way easier said than done, I understand. And when you first start to do it, it feels really hard and really impossible. But this is one of those things that the more you practice it, the easier it gets, the easier you're able to distract yourself. So I encourage you to give it a try. The other thing about both of these is they both tend to lead us into isolation. When we're extremely anxious or extremely angry, we tend to sort of shut down and go inward and keep people out. But it's the opposite of what we really need. What we really need is connection to people, and especially people who understand what we're going through. I'm not sure if you've seen this floating around social media either, but I think it's a really great visual on sort of, again, understanding what grief feels like and the process of it, that we think there's this idea that it lessens over time. And that really, it's not that, it's that we grow. Our tolerance expands, our ability to manage the difficulty of it grows and expands. And I think it's really beautiful to think of it that way, and also really realistic in how grief feels for most people. Okay, so coping with grief. There's no right or wrong way, as we've talked about. So it's important to find what works for you. That is the key. What works for you might not work for the next person. And what works for one loss might not work for a different kind of loss or the next loss. So during especially hard times like the holidays, you may need to use all your strategies, or you may need to come up with some new ones. So that's what we're going to talk about here. So this is by no means an exhaustive list, but these are strategies not only for grief, really, but these are really kind of tried and true, proven strategies for mental well-being. And they're all really, really important for mental well-being. Taking the time to feel. I don't know if you've heard that you have to feel it to heal it, but if we do not feel these difficult emotions and we avoid them or we deny them or shove them down, we can't heal, and they will just keep coming back to us in different ways. Being open to change. We are so resistant to change as human beings. I mean, biologically, we are resistant to change. It's our biology protecting us. But we do need to be open to change so that we don't stay in the place of grief. Boundaries. Saying yes when you need to say yes or no, depending on what you need. If somebody's asking you to do something and you are just not able to do it, learning to say no. That when you're in deep grief, you don't have to do everything you used to do. You're not required to still help at your kid's school every single time or as often as you used to. You don't have to do all of the things and function at the level that you used to. For the time being, you can say, no, not right now, I can't. Social support, as we talked about a little bit already, so incredibly important. Family, friends, church, spiritual community, support group. This group is support, is community, is connection. It's so incredibly important. And you guys are leaps and bounds ahead because you already have this established group here. Taking care of yourself physically, obviously. Movement of any kind, even 5 minutes, stretching, trying to sleep 8 hours if you can. Grief is exhausting. And eating, trying to just, nourish yourself, eating well, trying not to eat too much or not enough. This is one that is a little less popular, but is one that lots of people have talked about being really impactful, is giving back or helping others in some way. Taking the focus off of yourself and your pain. And then also it's another way to lead to social engagement and connection. Okay, so more tools and strategies. So we talked about spiritual or religious practice. Nature and outdoors, so healing, so powerful. A couple minutes even of breathing fresh air and feeling sunlight on your face can do wonders for our bodies and our minds. Grounding techniques. So I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with these, but these are just things that keep us, bring us back to the present moment. So for example, naming something that identifies with all your senses. So you're sitting in your car and you're kind of spinning on something and you're like, okay, I need to come back into this moment. What's something I can see? What's something I can hear? What's something I can smell? What am I tasting right now? Really kind of bringing you back to that present moment. Breathing techniques are also grounding. Journaling and writing, mindfulness and meditation, any kind of creative outlet of any kind is proven to be so incredibly healing. Back to gratitude lists, endless studies about the power of gratitude lists, and just even listing 3 things every morning or every evening, whether you write them down or just tick them off in your head, can be incredibly healing and powerful. Talking to a therapist, and then keeping your loved ones present, finding ways to integrate them in your life, even if they are no longer physically here. And we're going to actually spend a little chunk today doing just that. So I just wanted to come back to community for one more second, because it is so important. Sharing your experience and feelings can be just as cathartic for yourself and act as a source for others. It also provides deep, deep connection between you and other people. So finding a community, any community, support groups can be especially beneficial. And again, you guys already have one community right here through the foundation, which is so incredible. And something to be grateful for, right? Okay, so specific tips for the holidays. People always want to know about holidays. And, these aren't just helpful for the holidays, they can also be helpful for other milestones, birthdays, anniversaries, just difficult times that are kind of coming up. I always encourage people to make tentative commitments. I hope I can be there, but I'll have to see how I'm feeling. There is so much social pressure around the holidays, and you feel like you can't say no, and you have to go to everything and be everywhere, and it's my family and I can't miss it. But that is not true. You don't have to. So I really encourage people to make tentative commitments. And even just knowing that you have that out possibly can relieve a ton of anxiety and make it even more possible for you to be able to attend what you hope to attend. So also having a couple go-to lines when questions come up that aren't comfortable. Whether it's with family at a family gathering, or it's at a work Christmas party, and things are, these aren't people you're really close with, and it's a little uncomfortable, and they start asking you kind of questions that you're not okay with. I really appreciate you asking, but I'm just not up for talking about that right now. If you can have a couple lines, even one in your back pocket for those moments, it can make you feel more in control, and like you're not going to get, bombarded or just completely caught off guard by somebody talking about something you're not okay with. Encourage stories if this is something that you would like. Asking someone, hey, gosh, can you tell me a story about so and so, your person that you've lost, your mom, your dad, your sister? I would love to hear a funny share a story. Oh, I was just thinking about when this time, and that includes the person, and you share the story and you say their name, and that not only is a connection to that person, but it also allows other people to know that it's okay to talk about the person, to share stories. Having a plan A and a plan B. So this is sort of with the tentative commitments. Like if you decide that you're not going to be able to do the commitment that you had planned, then what is your plan B? So plan A is I'm going to go to the family get together. And plan B is I'm going to stay on my couch, order food, and watch my favorite movie. So sort of, again, taking a little control back and knowing what you're going to do if it turns out that you can't be where you wanted to be. Expect not everyone's going to do or say the right thing. Just remember that most people's intentions are good, and that people just don't know what to say a lot of the times. And so they don't say anything, or they say the wrong thing. And expecting that and knowing that going in can just be helpful. And then lastly, knowing the triggers are likely. So if you haven't noticed, I like definitions. A trigger. So what is a trigger? A trigger is a psychological stimulus that prompts involuntary recall of a previous traumatic experience. So it's a reminder. It's a reminder of what happened or who we're missing, and what more fertile time is there than the holidays or a milestone, or Mother's Day or Father's Day. So just knowing again that this is likely and preparing yourself for that can be really, really powerful. And also just remember, I know you probably all have experienced this, but it's often the anticipation and the lead up to these kind of holiday milestone anniversaries that is harder than the actual day of. So also just identifying that, like, okay, I'm feeling so anxious because it's the week before Christmas. And so I am incredibly sad and anxious, and I can't believe I'm not going to be with this person this Christmas. Instead of sort of going into it like, why is this happening? What is going on? And being shocked that you're triggered by something, really preparing yourself. And then going back to the coping strategies, really using those things to build yourself up and make yourself strong, so that when you're heading into these times, you're feeling a little bit more steady. Okay, so keeping our loved ones present. So we're talking about the holidays, but again, these aren't the only times that we want to keep our loved ones present, right? Birthdays, Mother's Day, Father's Day, all the other difficult times, we want to keep our people present. And so this is especially relevant in the holidays, and when the loss or the absence of a loved one can be especially magnified. We talked about, the waves of grief or the volume of grief, and the holidays is just a time when that is often louder than usual. So one way that we do this is through ritual. And so grief is an internal process. It's something that we do inside. Mourning is the external expression or action of grief. And then a ritual is one of those ways that we express or take the action of grief. It's an example of that action. Studies show that ritual can help ease the pain and burden of grief and connects others through a time of loss. They're symbols, and they provide us with some meaning during a really confusing and difficult time. In the US in particular, participation in organized religion is really on the decline, and this is where a lot of rituals used to happen. And so now people are really missing that. And so it's really become even more important to figure out how to integrate these rituals into our lives. And they don't have to be big, extensive rituals. They can be small. So here's some examples of rituals. A good place to begin when you're developing a ritual is to determine what you would like it to mean. Among virtually limitless options, rituals can be used to mark a life change, celebrate or commemorate an important memory, carry on an activity for the person who is no longer present, or connect us with living or deceased loved ones. These are just, again, some ideas. And I know that there was a recent loss in your community of somebody very special and important to this community, and that you guys have been doing some beautiful rituals. Some that were shared with me were spiritual celebrations of life and memorials, memorial fundraising based on the hobbies of the loved one, leaving a seat open at the table, buying their favorite flowers. And then even some of these on this list I heard have been done. The tributes that the foundation does, these are also rituals. The Memorial Monday Candlelight Vigil, the year-end memorial presentation. These are actually ways of combining ritual and community and storytelling all in one. And it's really amazing that you guys have this group to help bring you all together in this. So I don't know, I'm sure you guys can think of some other ones that either you have already thought of, or maybe this list inspires you to think of some. The altar for a loved one. Now, this again can be something really simple. I have one that I did for my dad, and it's just a little simple plate with a candle, a picture of him and I that I love, and then some of his handwriting. And it's just on my dresser in my room, and it's this beautiful reminder of him and a place I can go if I need to feel close to him and talk to him. But also just, I see it every single day. So things like that. Playlists, my siblings and I made a playlist of all of his favorite music. And so sometimes I just throw that on and I am just brought right back to a flood of memories. Okay, so we are going to participate in a candle ceremony. So these kind of ceremonies can be really healing. They're a way to honor our grief and our loss. And you can do things like this with your family, with friends. As you'll see, you can do them virtually, and they're still just as meaningful and important. And they're really especially meaningful when they are shared with others. So I'm going to take 2 minutes to set up. If you did remember to bring a candle, now would just be the time to grab it and make sure you have something to light it with. And if you need to stretch or use the bathroom, now is a good time. I'm just going to take 2 minutes, and then we will get started. And it's just going to be a couple minutes. Okay, everyone, here's my, this isn't the best setup I've ever had, but we're just gonna go with it. Okay. So the act of lighting a candle in honor of those who have passed is a centuries-old tradition that allows us to express what we cannot communicate with words. By lighting a candle for our loved ones, we remember and honor their life and their memory. So we're going to be lighting 4 candles. As we light these 4 candles, we light 1 for our grief, 1 for our courage, 1 for our memories, and 1 for our love. Can you see the, okay. The light of this first candle represents our grief. The pain of our loss is intense, but it reminds us of the depth of our love. The light of the second candle represents our courage to confront our sorrow, to comfort each other, to change our lives. The third candle we light in your memory, to the times we laughed, the times we cried, the times we were angry with each other, the fun things we did, the caring and the joy you gave us. So this is where I invite you to light your candle in memory of your loved ones as well. The fourth candle is the light of our love. We cherish the special place in our hearts that will always be reserved for those we have lost. We thank you for the gift of that your living brought to us. We love you. We remember you. So I'm going to read a poem now while we just look at our candles and reflect in our love and in our grief. And I will light a candle for you to shatter all the darkness and bless the times we knew. Like a beacon in the night, the flame will burn bright and guide us on our way. Oh, today I light a candle for you. The seasons come and go, and I'm weary from the change. I keep moving on, you know it's not the same. And when I'm walking all alone, do you hear me call your name? Do you hear me sing the songs we used to sing? You filled my life with wonder, touched me with surprise, always saw that something special deep within your eyes. And through the good times and the bad, we carried on with pride. I hold on to the love and the life that we knew. So I'm going to switch back to my other position. If you guys want to keep your candles lit, I encourage you to do so. Just keep it lit right next to you for the remainder, if you so choose. Okay, and I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. I wonder what people thought of that. Does anyone want to share anything in the chat? I'm going to look and see. Oh, that was beautiful. Thank you. Okay. Mexicans have a great way to honor, remember the dead, and encourage self-healing. Diaz de la Muertos. Beautiful tradition. Yes, it's such a great tradition. Absolutely love it. Okay. Thank you guys for sharing. Okay, so let's get back. I hope, again, that was helpful and meaningful, and also inspire you to know that there's just things like this that you can do in your own life with your family and friends. Okay. Okay, so how do we support people in their grief? After all that we have discussed, I thought it would be important to also talk about how to support people who are grieving. And then this can also serve as a guide for if you are the one who's grieving, on how maybe to ask for what you need. Um, you don't need to have any answers or give any advice. Your goal is not to make things better, it is to support them in their pain. The most important thing you can do is to simply reach out, to show up, to just be there. This is especially relevant as we head into the holidays again, because so many people are in pain and having a difficult time and missing somebody during this season. And so this is a great time to be reaching out to those people in your life, or to ask somebody to do something with you if you're the one who's really the one who needs some extra support. So this is another little vignette done by grief expert Megan Devine, and I think it's really helpful in sort of describing how we learn to help people in pain, and what she has found over lots of time and interviews and research that is actually what we need when we're in pain.
So, what do we do about all the pain we see in the world? All the pain we feel in our own lives? And why does it seem like our best efforts to help somebody feel better always backfire? I've been studying intense grief and loss, baby death, violent crimes, accidents, suicides, and natural disasters. And I've learned something really interesting. Cheering people up, telling them to be strong and persevere, helping them move on, it doesn't actually work. It's kind of a puzzle. It seems counterintuitive, but the way to help someone feel better is to let them be in pain. This is true for those giant losses and the ordinary, everyday ones. Educator Parker Palmer writes, "The human soul doesn't want to be advised or fixed or saved. It simply wants to be witnessed exactly as it is." He's talking about acknowledgement here. Acknowledgement is this really amazing multi-tool. It makes things better even when they can't be made right. For example, somebody's struggling. Their baby died, or there's been a bad accident, or their mom got sick, and they're just sad. It's way more helpful to join them in their pain than it is to cheer them up. But here's what we tend to do instead. You have 2 other children, you need to find joy in them. Or, you know what you need? You just need to go out dancing and shake it off. Or, I felt really sad once. Did you try acupuncture? We're not really sure what to do with someone's pain, so we do what we've been taught. We look on the bright side. We try to make people feel better. We give them advice. It's not like this is nefarious. I mean, we try to cheer people up because we think that's our job. We're not supposed to let people stay sad. The problem is, you can't heal somebody's pain by trying to take it away from them. Now, acknowledgement does something different. When a giant hole opens up in someone's life, it's actually much more supportive to acknowledge that hole and let pain exist. It's actually a radical act to let things hurt. It goes against what we've been taught. In order to really support you, I have to acknowledge that things really are as bad as they feel to you. If I try to cheer you up, you end up defending yourself and your feelings. If I give you advice, you feel misunderstood instead of supported. And I don't get what I want either, because I wanted you to feel better. It's pretty rare that you could actually talk somebody out of their pain. Rarely does the admonishment to look on the bright side actually heal things for someone. It just makes them stop telling you about their pain. It's so tempting to try to make things better. When somebody shares something painful, it's much more helpful to say, "I'm sorry that's happening. Do you want to tell me about it?" To be able to say, "This hurts," without being talked out of it, that's what helps. Being heard helps. It seems too simple to be of use, but acknowledgement can be the best medicine we have. It makes things better, even when they can't be made right.
I hope that was helpful. I think it's really an amazing thing to consider, that what we have been taught is often not what people need. And as hard as that is to realize, the beauty in it is that once you do know what people need, you can give it to them. Um, so we all, people often ask, well, what do I say? What do I do? And sometimes I do think it is helpful to talk about what not to say. And again, this comes from this big grief project that was done, and thousands of people were interviewed. Um, and these are the things that came up over and over again as what people did not want to hear. So, food for thought. Also, we have all said these things. I have said these things. This is not to make anyone feel bad or shame you. It is purely for, I call like grief education. I think we all lack grief education. We don't know, we weren't taught the language of grief. And so when we know better, we do better. So just some helpful things to consider. And then the flip side, what are some helpful things we can say? How are you doing today? I'm sorry you're going through this. I'm here for you. People also they just want comfort. And sometimes it's really awkward, these conversations, and we don't know what to do and we fumble around. And it's just helpful to kind of go in knowing like this might be awkward. I might not say the right thing, but I'm going to do it anyway. And that, I think, is the most important thing, is to just say something. It's better than saying nothing. Some other helpful reminders: be consistent, check in regularly. This is one of the biggest things I hear from people in my practice, is that after a couple months or even a couple weeks, the support just sort of drops off and nobody is checking in anymore. Nobody is acknowledging this humongous thing that just happened. So similarly, maintaining support long after the death or the loss. This can be setting a reminder on your phone, putting important dates in your calendar so that you remember the anniversary of the death or the person's birthday. Don't ask for or expect anything in return. The messages that you get that say a text, "How are you doing? I'm thinking of you. No need to respond." Those are so welcome at a time when you may just not feel like responding, but the receiving of it was so helpful. Saying their name, people often say, well, I don't want to remind them, I don't want to bring up something that's really painful. We're always thinking of the people who are not with us anymore. We are always thinking of them. So say their name And it can be really powerful. You can sometimes see someone's face light up when you say the name of the person that they loved and lost. It lets you know that they are thinking of them as much as you are thinking of them. Remembering the important dates, like I was talking about with the calendar, that can be really, really meaningful when you send a message or a card on an important date. It lets them know you've taken the time to do that, to set that reminder. Be respectful of boundaries. If people need space, give them space. If people are not responding to your text messages, just let them have that space. Consider when and where you approach someone. So when you're in the grocery store, this is often like a terrible place for a grieving person, as I'm sure many of you have experienced. You walk into the grocery store and it's like everybody's just living their life, and I am in this deep, deep pain, and everybody's just picking out bananas. Like, how is this happening? And so when you see somebody, that has just had this tremendous loss, just sort of know that that's what's going on. Or at Starbucks or at the pickup line at school, like people are just trying to get through the day. And so that's not the time to really go in and say, how are you doing? Tell me what's been going on. That's the time to just say, hey, I've been thinking about you a lot. And then you circle back with a phone call or an invite for coffee or a card, and let them know that you're really there for them. And then being specific. So this is a big one. We all know the classic, if you need anything, let me know. It is a default for so many of us. It's also impossible to respond to I'm sure you've all been on the other end of that, and it's like, I don't even know what I need, and I don't even know if I can ask for it. So next slide is going to talk about this one. So offering to make the ordinary everyday things easier so that your grieving person can have the luxury of just being devastated. So I actually have a really long, exhaustive list of ideas that comes from this grief project and study that I was talking about a little earlier, of things that all the people that were interviewed, they put together, of things that were specifically helpful. This is just a very little snippet of that, but if you would like that, we can send that on to anyone that's interested. Sometimes just coming up with an idea is the hard part. And, the way you can approach it is, I've got a couple of things I'm thinking that might be helpful, X, Y, Z. Can you let me know which one would be most useful right now? So you give them options, give them choices, but they're specific, right? They are very, very specific, and that is the key. I'm going to drop off a meal this week. Would Tuesday or Thursday be better? Any food allergies I should know about? Just real cut and dry and specific. I really love this quote from Mary Oliver. We shake with joy, we shake with grief. What a time they have, these two housed as they are in the same body. So just a reminder that even when we feel deep pain, to remember that there is joy inside of us. It is in there. So thank you so very much. I am really grateful for your time. I'm actually going to do a little closing grief meditation for anyone that's interested in just sticking around. It's about 3 to 4 minutes. Angela's got a few things to share. And then, so if you need to go, feel free. Thank you so much. And if you want to stick around after Angela, we'll just go through that as a way to kind of close.
Thank you so much, Katie. We do have another screen we can pull up here. I just wanted to talk to you all a little bit about our year-end memorial. So Katie, thank you so much for joining us and for all of your helpful ways to keep our loved one with us all season long. Will just be a moment here before we go back to the meditation. So I want to take this moment to thank each of you for joining us this evening and for being brave enough to share your grief. We truly believe it is important for us to take time to remember our loved ones and the ways they made a profound impact on our lives. With this in mind, we would like to encourage you to submit your loved one's name and a photo, along with something special that you want others to know about your loved one, so we can include them in a year-end memorial reflection. Following this evening's program, we will send you a link to view this special tribute presentation, which will invite you to pause and reflect. We will be including the tribute submission link in the follow-up email. So in the last 2 weeks of December, we will provide you a link to view this tribute presentation as often as you may wish, to pause, honor, give thanks, and remember. We would like to also ask you to please join us now through December for our other gratitude and giving programs and reflections. Please join our gratitude campaign to reflect on what you are grateful for and encourage your friends and family to do the same. FSR and the sarcoidosis community join with you in remembering and reflecting and in shining hope on this season. We hold your loved ones in our hearts and ask you to continue to walk alongside us in our quest for a future where sarcoidosis is no more. Katie, I turn it back to you to close this out with a reflection.
Thank you so much. So many amazing programs. You guys are so lucky. Okay, so I'm just going to ask that everybody is muted. I think everybody is. Everybody's cameras off, obviously. So let's close our eyes and try and get as comfortable as you can in your chair. And let's take a couple deep breaths in through the nose and out through your mouth. And do a quick little scan of your body for any tension, like in your shoulders, in your neck, and try and just kind of relax that area and try and get 5% more comfortable in your chair. Let's begin by sensing our breath. Feel your breathing in the area of your chest. If you would like, you can take one hand and hold it gently on your heart, as if you were holding a vulnerable human. As you continue to breathe, bring to mind the loss or pain that you are grieving. Let the story, the images, the feelings come naturally. Hold them gently. Take your time. Let the feelings come layer by layer, a little at a time. Keep breathing softly, compassionately. Let whatever feelings are there, pain, tears, anger, love, fear, sorrow, let them come. Touch them gently. Let them unravel out of your body and out of your mind. Make space for any images that arise. Allow the whole story. Breathe and hold it all with tenderness and compassion, kindness for it all. for you and for others. The grief we carry is part of the grief of the world. Hold it gently. Let it be honored. You do not have to keep it anymore. You can let it go into the heart of compassion. You can weep. Releasing the grief we carry is a long, tear-filled process, yet it follows the natural intelligence of the body and the heart. Trust it. Trust the unfolding. Along with meditation, some of your grief will want to be written, to be cried out, to be sung, to be danced. Let the timeless wisdom within you carry you through grief and awaken a tender, open heart. Keep in mind that grief doesn't just dissolve. Instead, it arises in waves, and gradually, with growing compassion, there comes more space around it. The heart opens, and in its own time, little by little, gaps of new life break in the rain clouds. The body relaxes, freer, and breaths appear. This is the natural cycle that you can trust, how life and the heart renews itself. Like the spring after winter, it always does. Thank you all so much for anyone who stuck around. I hope that was helpful and soothing. And we really appreciate you spending the time with us again. We wish you a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much, Katie, for joining us, and thank you all for joining us for this special evening. We hope you have a very great evening, and we'll follow up with the event with a recording and links to the resources. Thank you so much.